Welcome back, boys and girls. Today is Wednesday, September 30th, 2020. And last time that we had science class, we discussed substances, elements, and pure substances, which are composed of elements and compounds, and then mixtures, which, remember, there's two categories, heterogeneous and homogeneous. And today we will be discussing physical changes and chemical changes. Okay, so today's lesson objective is that you will be able to identify if it is a physical change or a possible chemical change, the formation of a new substance. Okay, our target TEK for today is 6.5D. Identify the formation of a new substance by using the evidence of a possible chemical change, such as a production of a gas change in temperature, production of precipitate, or color change. Essential question. How does evidence of chemical reactions indicate that new substances with different properties are formed? So that is very important. The evidence of chemical reactions. Okay, how do those evidence of chemical reactions indicate that it is a new substance with different properties? Okay, so by the end of this lesson, you should be able to distinguish between physical and chemical changes of matter. So let me just engage your brain. Take a moment, close your eyes, and think of these questions that I'm about to ask you. True or false? When an ice cube melts, it is still water. What do you think? Whenever? Okay. True or false? Matter is lost when a candle is burned. Think about that for a minute. Okay, you're burning a candle, is matter lost when that candle is burned? And then finally, when your body digests food, the food is changed into a new substance. True or false? Okay, if you answer true to these questions, you are absolutely right. Okay, when an ice cube melts, it is still water. Matter is lost when a candle is burned. And when your body digests food, the food is changed into a new substance. So, what is a chemical change? Chemical changes. These are chemical reactions. They occur when two or more molecules interact and the molecules change into a new substance. Bonds between atoms are broken and created to form new molecules. Okay, so again, keywords, they change into a new substance. So it goes from being one to forming something new. And let me back up, boys and girls. Here after this essential question, if you would take a moment to pause, and here if you click on this speaker, there is a video that I would like for you to see. So take the moment to watch that video. Chemical change. When two or more substances join to form a new substance with new chemical properties. Examples: iron rusting, gas burning, eggs cooking, bread rising. These are all examples of chemical changes. Okay, think about what happens to the burning when something is burning, okay, like when you burn logs or you turn on a match or a candle. Think about the egg frying, what happens to it. Think about that chain and that piece of metal that is there after it's been out for a while and it starts forming rust. Okay, so what is happening there? There's these changes that are chemical. Okay, so a chemical change occurs when one or more substances change into entirely new substances with different properties. For example, in a campfire, the dry, dense wood becomes powdery ashes, new substances with different properties. When a cake is baked, the liquid cake batter becomes the solid, spongy treat. Whenever a new substance is formed, a chemical change has occurred. Be aware, though, that a chemical change are not exactly as chemical properties. Two different things. Chemical changes, chemical properties. the burning is the chemical change. Again, the burning is the chemical change. The flammability is a chemical property. Is it flammable? That is a property. Okay, the chemical properties of a substance describe which chemical changes can or cannot happen to the substance. Chemical changes are the processes. So chemical properties describe, okay, which chemical changes can or cannot happen to the substance. And the chemical changes are the actual process by which substances actually change into new substances. Okay, so one more time. Chemical properties describe if it can or cannot change or happen to that substance. Chemical changes are those processes by which substances actually change into a new substance. Okay, so in a chemical change, a substance's identity changes because its chemical makeup change. This happens as the particles and chemical bonds that make up the substance get rearranged. For example, in the picture, when iron rusts, molecules of oxygen from the air combine with iron atoms to form a new compound. Rust is not iron or oxygen. It is a new substance made up of oxygen and iron joined together. Because chemical changes involve changes in the arrangements of particles, they are often influenced by temperature. At higher temperatures, the particles in a substance have more average kinetic energy. They move around a lot more freely and so are rearranged more easily. Therefore, at higher temperatures, chemical reactions often happen more quickly. Think of baking a cake. The higher the temperature of the oven, the less time the cake will need to bake because the faster the chemical reactions occur. Okay, so take a moment and think about that. Okay, now we move on to physical changes. Physical changes the form or appearance of a substance. Keyword, does not change substance into anything new. Examples, whipping eggs. If you whip the eggs, they are still eggs. Boil water. If you boil water, it is still water. Okay, it just turns into vapor, but it's a form of water. Dissolving sugar. Dicing vegetables. Okay, that vegetable still holds all its properties. So what are physical changes of matter? A physical property of matter is any property that can be observed or measured without changing the chemical identity of the substance. A physical change is a change that affects one or more physical properties of the substance. So there's a difference. A physical property is any property that can be observed or measured without changing the chemical identity of the substance. A physical change is a change that affects one or more physical properties of the substances. Physical changes occur when a substance changes from one form to another. However, the chemical identity of the substance remains the same. Okay? The chemical identity of the substance remains the same. So in the example of the dicing vegetables, the vegetable continues to be that same vegetable. Changes in observable properties. The appearance, shape, or size of a substance may be altered. Again, going back to the example of the vegetable. It changed in size, got smaller, because you continue to cut it. Okay, so it changes during a physical change. Another example, the process of turning wool into a sweater requires that the wool undergo physical changes. Wool is sheared from the sheep. The wool is then cleaned and the wool fibers are separated from one another. Shearing and separating the fibers are physical changes that change the shape, volume, and texture of the wool. So again, an example, the vegetables or wool. Changes that do not alter the chemical identity of the substances. So physical changes are changes that do not alter the chemical identity of the substances. During the process of turning the wool into a sweater, many physical changes occur in the wool. However, the wool does not change into some other substance as a result of these changes. Therefore, physical changes do not change the chemical identity of a substance. Another example of a physical change happens when you fill an ice cube tray with water and place it inside a freezer. If the water gets cold enough, it will freeze to form ice cube. Freezing water does not change its chemical makeup. In fact, you could melt the ice cube and have liquid water again. Changes of state, like all physical changes, do not change the chemical makeup of the substances. Okay, so those do not. So some other examples of physical changes would be like stretching a rubber band. It continues being a rubber band. Dissolving sugar in water. The sugar will still be sugar. Cutting your hair doesn't stop being hair. Melting butter. Bending a paper clip. Crushing an aluminum can. So all these things are still examples of physical changes. So let's go over that again. Physical changes. Changing the state of matter, changing the color, changing the temperature, changing the shape, changing the texture. These are all physical changes. It does not alter the chemical component of the substance. It does not alter the chemical identity of that substance. Okay, so these are all examples of physical changes. Okay, boys and girls. Okay, so again, physical changes, the changing the state of matter, changing the color, changing the temperature, changing the shape, changing the texture. Chemical changes. Unexpected color change. New molecules created in a chemical reaction radiate light differently, producing new colors. Examples: fireworks, leaves that change color in the fall. Those are chemical changes. Unexpected temperature change. During chemical bonding, energy is released or absorbed, making their surroundings hotter or cooler. Example: adding salt to ice lowers its freezing point. Body temperature changes to fight infections. When you have a fever because you're sick. Combustion burning, a chemical reaction between substances, usually including oxygen, accompanied by giving off heat and or light. This is a permanent change that cannot be undone. Examples: wood burning, candle, rusting. Precipitates. Forms. When a solid suddenly appears in a solution and settles to the bottom, collects on another object, or makes the solution cloudy. Milk souring, bathtub rings. So again, this is not precipitation like rain. This is precipitate in a different form. When a solid suddenly appears in a solution and settles to the bottom and collects on another object, or makes the solution cloudy. Okay, so there's a difference there. And then bubbles form. When gases produced in a chemical reaction are released. Example: Alka-Seltzers, bubbles in sodas. So then let's go ahead and check for understanding. So take a moment, pause this video, and see if you can list the 5 pieces of evidence that show a chemical change. And I know this is just a recap of our lesson. We will go thoroughly through each one of those individual slides. If you happen to miss our class for some reason, just make sure that you watch the video and make sure that you complete all the activities that are attached to this PowerPoint so you can get a better understanding. I hope that this lesson has explained well the difference between chemical changes and physical changes. So not next week, actually on Friday, because it is an A day and science will be Friday. On Friday, we will begin discussing metals, nonmetals, and metalloids. Okay, so we will get a closer look at the periodic table. Now that we've discussed the 2 types of matter, which are pure substances and mixtures. We've discussed atoms. We've discussed elements. We've discussed physical and chemical changes. We are now going to move on to metals, nonmetals, and metalloids, and take a closer look at the periodic table. I can't wait to see you Friday, boys and girls.